morning. We're waiting on two additional members to join us. Board members Willie and Anderson. School Board of Duval County is now convened in its committee meeting to review the draft May 19th, 2020 regular agenda. Do the roll call a little later. Public access. This meeting can be accessed by the public online at www.duvalschools.org/board. The meeting can be viewed locally on Comcast Channel 212, or it can also be viewed on WJCT Channel 7.4, and a digital antenna will be required. It is important that the public use one of the above remote ways to access the meeting. If there are any problems or questions about gaining access to the meeting, the public can call 904-390-2126 and leave a name, number, and brief message. That number again is 904-390-2126. Topics to be discussed. Agenda committee meeting. Draft agenda review for May 19, 2020 regular meeting. And we'll do the roll call. Board member Grimes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Board member Joyce.
Good morning.
Board member Willie. Board member Anderson. And Board member Hershey will be delayed, and Seth Juarez will be delayed. We have 3 members present. Ms. Grimes, you want items that you want to discuss? Full?
The first one, number 1.
Okay.
And that's for right now. That's
Board member Joyce.
I want to pull item number 1, item number 3, number 5, number 6, number 11.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
11.
11, okay.
Number 12.
12.
And number 17.
Number 17.
And number 27.
27. Okay, let me make sure I got those correctly. 1, 3, 5, 6, 11, 12, 17, and 27.
That is correct. Thank you.
I would just add item 4 to that list. Okay. Good morning, Board Member Anderson.
good morning.
Okay. Any items you want to discuss? Pull?
Yes. The board member Joyce went through several of them, but I'll repeat the overlapping ones.
Okay.
3, 6, 7, 9 sort of goes with 7, but 17, and
Okay, let me repeat that to make sure I have them. 3, 6, 7, 9, and 17.
correct.
Okay. waiting on Board Member Willie. So we'll go ahead and get started. I don't see him on. First item is item 1, Board Member Grimes.
Yeah, I noticed that we are on the chamber, and I guess it just kind of comes up every year that I don't know that we're getting a lot for our money. So I guess I throw it to the superintendent because I know that there have been times, particularly this year, that they really have not helped us. So that's my question.
Through the chair to Board Member Grimes, I would like to share just recently the Chamber has been donating facial coverings for us, masks, and to date, I believe we have well over 8,000 masks that we are going to be able to use for closing down the school and those employees who have to work on site throughout June and July. So recently, they have been very helpful in helping us ascertain masks, which has been very challenging for the school district. As far as the other areas, we continue to have, I believe, a strong partnership with programs beyond school. I'm not going to say that correctly, beyond the school walls. Our partnership with CTE, we went through prior to COVID-19, we had developed a job fair for our seniors for many of the corporations that had entry-level positions and they were looking for employees. The Chamber worked with us to develop that job fair, but unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we had to cancel that event. So I think there have been opportunities that we are trying to enhance our partnership.
Okay, as I said, in the past, we've had a really great partnership with them, and it's been kind of, and I know that they got their own things about staff and that kind of thing. So just want to make sure that we're getting our money's worth.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Grimes. I share that concern. For $15,000, I think we could have purchased a mask. And I do plan to talk with CEO Daniel Davis about our relationship, because this is an annual cost. And there was a time when the Chamber made sure when they brought in a new company that they would partner with one of our schools, primarily turnaround schools, and make sure that we develop those business partnerships that a lot of turnaround schools really need. A lot of schools need them. And there seems to be a discrepancy, certainly with the turnaround schools and their business partners. So that's my concern. And I think some of the interest they've shown recently is because they realize the contract is up again this year. That's my unofficial interpretation of the interest they've shown in the district in the last month or so. Board Member Willie has joined us. Do you have any items you want to pull for discussion? You gotta unmute your mic. Okay.
Yeah, I had a few items. I had some questions just sort of generally around the school choice section. So just when we get to that section, then I had 19, 20, 22, and That's 28.
19, 20, 22, and 28.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Joyce had a question on item 1 and 2.
Thank you so much, Chair Jones. I have actually two questions. In the Chamber of Commerce Chamber partnership, it says that we have someone that sits on the chamber board. Who is, can I ask, that is?
That's the board chair.
Okay, all right, because that would be you. And then the other one was the Council of Great City Schools. And so this one is obviously a pretty large amount of money. And I know before the COVID-19 situation, they were working with us on TV, and they do other services as well. And I wanted to ask the superintendent, so through the chair to Dr. Green, those dues that we pay to the Great Council of Great City Schools, does that cover those expenses when they are working with us? Their additional costs.
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, as it's related to strategic planning, that is not inclusive of this. We still have to pay their travel and related costs to the strategic plan.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on item 1? Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I don't have anything in my tab 1. Did everybody else have something, or did I miss something?
Yeah, tab 1 are the dues and fees for 20 school year for next school year.
Right. My tab is empty. So if I can grab them, or somebody could just send me a screenshot, maybe sometime.
Board Member Anderson, check underneath your agenda, like the first 6 pages. See if it's attached to the first 6 pages.
It starts with, it's page 10 and 11.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
When I came on, you were talking about sort of, I guess, the chamber dues, and you were saying that we're concerned about that amount of money, or the relationship, or that 12,000, which I guess the 15,000 or so dollars. I mean, I came on the tail end of that. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess my concern was the partnership, the relationship between the chamber and the school district has not been as strong as it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And just question whether or not we're actually getting the true benefits from that partnership. We're paying out a little over $15,000 a year for that partnership, and how do we cultivate that and make it a stronger, more beneficial partnership for our students?
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And I would say, especially now with some of the political walkings that we're going to have to go through with happening and stuff, I think this is a relationship we want to make sure we're braiding tighter at this point, just because of the different levels and layers of influence that you have. But I would love to see that relationship strengthened. I think you mentioned the fact that the partnerships with different schools, and those are always a highlight. So I would love to see that sort of come back, and I think we can make it happen. So I just wanted to, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and I remember last March, I think it was March of 2019, Dr. Green spoke to the board, and I joined board chair Hershey in attending that meeting, and they were the chairperson at that time of the chamber board was very supportive, along with 2 or 3 other members, of what they could do to help with the Hannah Sales Tax Initiative. And we never heard anything else from the board or the chamber. So I'm a little disappointed in that. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now that I had a chance to kind of look through this really quickly. I just will say in reference to the chamber, I think obviously there's room to grow that partnership. I think it's important for us to grow that partnership. And I'm curious, as you speak with Dean Davis or the other folks here at the Chamber of Warren, if there is interest or opportunity for us to do more of a meeting, maybe I know that it took us getting back together with the JPEF to be able to clear annual grievances and re-establish a partnership. I don't know if there's opportunity to do that with the chamber. Maybe it doesn't look quite the same, but whatever it was that has been the barrier, I think it's really important as for our community that we figure out how to move forward and work together for the future of Duval County Public Schools. So I'll say that piece for the chamber. The other membership to the boards department, so like the Council of Great City Schools, NSBA, FSBA. At one point, when we came on the board, maybe someone can help refresh my memory. Are there designees, delegates, if you will, from the board that sort of keep up with each of these organizations? I'm thinking specifically of the Council of Great City Schools and who's our person for that?
I'm not aware, other than FSBA.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any actual memberships. I don't know if Laura.
Through the chair, I know at one point when we first came on, we sort of had a preference and said, hey, which sort of groups do you want to be aligned with? Because I know, I think Lori was the chair and she said to you, which one do you want to do? I suggested you Cube. I think it's a good opportunity. So I think we had a list of all of them and we sort of went through. I don't know if that cycle has come back around for us to do that again, but I remember us going and seeing all of them and sort of picking who was going to go to which one. But I don't know if it was a formal process or informal process.
But I thought I misinterpreted Vice Chair Anderson's question. I thought you meant having a membership being a part of a governing board of those entities. Are you talking about just attending the workshops and the conferences?
Yeah, I mean, we're paying dues here, and so I think it would be really important to make sure that we have a representative from our board be present as often as possible, so that we're able to reap the rewards, whatever it is that they're sharing, whatever direction it is that they're giving. I was able to hop on a conference call with Council of Great City Schools on Friday. They're doing a recurring call. I was particularly interested in the topic this past week. It was really powerful to be on a call with board members throughout the country, to hear what was happening in LA, in Boston, in Chicago, and the challenges they're facing and the obstacles to overcome. And I think having somebody committed to each of these groups to report back to the board would be helpful, especially if we're paying for it.
Okay.
I think the superintendent.
All right, I'll double check those memberships and make sure that we have someone assigned to each.
Chairman Jones.
Yes, Dr. Green.
For the Council of Great City Schools, the school districts that are members, the superintendents are the ones who sit on the sort of board of the Council of Great City Schools. Okay. And the other part, I'm just not aware of like FSBA. Those are strictly for board members. The Council of Great City Schools, they do training with board members, or they may have like a special call out, but I think the membership is mostly for the superintendent to sit on that board for the Council of Great City Schools. But I have no problem with checking into that and finding out is there an arm that is related to school board members.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr.
On that.
Okay, thank you.
If I can, Chair Jones, last year when we came on the board, board member Willie was correct, and I don't know that we got to choose, but I think there was some assigning done These are the different organizations that, you know, you'll focus on. And so I did have the opportunity to travel to two of the events for the Council of Great City Schools. And when we went to the annual conference in, I think it was in October of last year in Louisville, the superintendent and staff did presentations. So yeah, so it was just really helpful. And I was sorry the more board members couldn't attend that because I thought it was a fabulous conference.
Yeah, they're very beneficial and very helpful and to see what's going on around the country and to determine what are best practices. I think that's a good way to discover those. Any other questions on item 1? And I know Laura Hershey is on the executive board for FSBA, and I think Vice Chair Anderson is alternate. I'll recheck that schedule.
I do have a
For FSBA,
But now,
on the legislative for FSBA, but I think the nominations for board director and legislative, all that's coming back around this summer, FSBA.
okay. Woman Willard?
Yeah, one other quick question. I didn't know we had I guess we're paying a due for the National Black Caucus of the NSBA. So that's something that was new to me. So I just wanted to get some clarity. As we figure out like who's doing what, I would love to find out more information about that and potentially be the point for that or offer myself up as the point for that. Just want to throw that out there.
Okay, do you meet the criteria? Okay.
I think so.
All right. Thank you, sir. I'll make a note of that. Okay. No other questions on item 1. Next item is item 3. Board Member Joyce.
Thank you, Chair Jones. So through the chair to Dr. Green, I have a couple of questions about this. So, Virtual Instructional Academy, that is the district's online platform that we use. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the state requires us to use 3 vendors. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, we're required to have 3 virtual options
Okay.
for our school district.
And I guess my question really is, moving forward, as we, you know, look into the future after this pandemic and what we're doing with Duval Homeroom, does that affect or change or possibly change what we're doing here?
Through the chair to board member Joyce, I'm going to let Mr. Wright answer that question.
Thank you. Good morning, through the chair. Another contract that comes annually for about $1.7 million in Edgenuity. We decided to pull that from this item to discuss what options we have moving forward. Edgenuity is really the baseline curriculum for all of our online platforms. So we're currently going back to Edgenuity and working with the principal of DBIA to determine how we could utilize some of the systems we created through Duval Homeroom to bring the cost of that contract down significantly. So we're exploring those options to see if we can have additional cost savings with that Edgenuity contract. Really, with the 3 contracts on this agenda item, they really get used very minimally, and we counsel students towards DBIA and Edgenuity more so, and that's why Edgenuity is not on here, because we are working on options to renegotiate that and see if we can bring it.
So, state requires us to have 3 options, and we are using a 4, is what you're saying, right? We have another one.
Well, the Edgenuity is not really a virtual option. That's virtual curriculum that is used through virtual platforms, and it has the learning management system similar to the Canvas or Blackboard embedded within it that allows for not only DBIA, the school, the full-time school, to have online curriculum, but also delivery, and there's some other options that we use Edgenuity for. So that's more of a curriculum for our online school.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Vice Chair Anderson.
I'm gonna kind of pick up where Board Member Joyce left off, because I was having a little bit of confusion about this as well. So if we offer Duval Virtual as an option, and then we are required to have 3 additional options on top of that, or can we have Duval Virtual be one of our options?
I think Karen would probably be able to answer that, but my understanding is through Duval Virtual, we have to have the additional 3 options. Maybe Karen can assist with that question.
That's staying.
Hi, good morning. Through the chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Through the chair, good morning, board members. I would need to do further research because to be an approved choice, one of the 3 choices, the provider has to be approved by the Florida Department of Education as an approved provider. One more detail, it's not just 3 choices, it's due to the size of our county and it's in statute. It's 3 choices through all grade bands, grades K through 12. So sometimes a provider is only approved maybe for a portion, maybe a few grades, but not all of K-12. So it's possible that you need more than 3 because of the requirement that all grade bands have 3 options.
Okay, I appreciate that clarity. So does Duval Virtual cover K through 12?
Yes, Duval Virtual serves K-12 students.
Okay, and is it approved by the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Duval Virtual is an approved virtual provider.
All right, and I would like to explore the option of having it be one of our 3 choices, especially as we have gone through this process. We haven't had much opportunity to talk about what comes next year, but I foresee this being something that people may be interested in trying to keep up, or at least keep on the table as an option. I certainly don't want to send all those students out of town. The only other question I have for next year is the charter school that we have, Florida Cyber Charter Academy in Duval. That's the DBA for, it looks like, Florida Virtual Charter. And so I'm curious about how that fits in this whole system and conversation as well. And with that, for the moment, through the chair, maybe the superintendent has a response.
Well, through the chair to Board Member Anderson, I wanted to clarify Duval Virtual Academy is not the same as Duval Homeroom.
Right.
Those are 2 different things. I just want to make sure that that's understood.
It was not the same.
Okay, that was the point I wanted to make, is that Duval Homeroom is different than Duval Virtual Academy.
And I like Courtney's, Mr. Wright's thought process about trying to integrate some of what we've learned through Duval Homeroom into Duval Virtual. I really think that this is a place where we need to invest some time and some energy, otherwise we are going to lose students. I'm really concerned about that. So whatever we can do to try to mirror some of the practices and the trial by fire best practices that have been forged in these last couple of months, to make this a viable option for students, I think is going to really be in our best interest. So I'd really like to be able to see how we can pull some of that. I know you said we're working on, reducing that cost for Edgenuity and integrating some of the Duval Homeroom pieces of that puzzle. And if we don't do it, somebody else will pick it up. I see here that we even have budgeted more for these other providers in the 2021 school year, due to an increased demand of credit recovery at the middle school level. And so I was curious about that, and then how can we capture that? Is there opportunity there for Duval virtual, homeroom, hybrid, or something?
Through the chair, actually that line needs to be deleted about credit recovery. The credit recovery is done through Edgenuity. That was an error and did not get deleted when we updated the agenda item. And the total budgeted cost for these three really is the same. What you see is the 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 was the actual cost spend, but we always have budgeted about that $35,000 for those three. So that's the difference in the cost. We just use them very minimally because we use Duval Virtual and Edgenuity for the majority of our online options.
So is there an opportunity to drop one of these?
So I don't believe there's an opportunity to drop one because Edgenuity services or DVIA through Edgenuity services just 612, and then we use the other contracts to pick up the elementary students because Edgenuity doesn't have curriculum for elementary. So that gap to have the three services for all grade bands requires all three.
I thought that we just said that Duval virtual serves K-12, so I guess I'm a little confused with what we do then.
Duval Virtual, I'm sorry, Duval Virtual Academy does service K-12 students. Edgenuity is curriculum for Duval Virtual Academy for 612. Then we use the K-12 curriculum for the elementary students enrolled in Duval Virtual School.
So K-12 is not a platform, it's a curriculum?
Correct, but also an online provider.
Okay. Okay, the last thing I'll say on this item is that I really think that we need to look at recruitment opportunities and the ability to expand our virtual portfolio. We know that Florida Virtual School has, I think, quadrupled their capacity. Florida Virtual at the state level has moved to 2.4 million seats, I think, from something in the hundreds of thousands of seats. And so there is a significant anticipation that there will be a need for virtual learning, or a desire, maybe not a need, but for some people this is working. And if we aren't there to figure out how to capture those students and recruit actively, then we're going to miss the bus. And so I have concerns about that, and I hope that we're looking forward to the future on this particular virtual school option.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Let me note that Board Member Hershey has joined us. Then I'll come back to Mr. Willie. Ms. Hershey, you had any items you wanted to pull? Okay, you have it. Okay. Board Member Willie.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Board Member Anderson. Just I think there's the tide is changing. There's going to be a lot of differences that happen once we see ourselves out of this pandemic, and I think it may yield itself to having some sort of report workshop. I know Dr. Green, Mr. Wright, I know y'all are thinking every day about what this is going to look like, so I would just love to just hear about your thoughts. And I think it does sort of align with some of the things that we're sort of talking about today, but even more than that, everything from curriculum to how folks are interacting, even the staffing, the HR side. So I would love to see some sort of workshop that we talk about all of those things, and we'll see what you all are thinking, because I know you've got some brilliant ideas in there. Just trying to focus on that. So I agree with the Board Member Anderson. I appreciate those comments.
Okay. Any other questions? Board Member Joyce.
Thank you so much. I just want to piggyback on Board Member Anderson and Willie. There is a difference between the Duval Virtual Instruction Academy and what we're doing now. And I think that moving forward, I know there's a lot of frustration think there's a market for what this platform looks like now. That we have parents overseeing education at the home, but their teachers are checking in every day. They're teaching them online. And so I don't know what that looks like moving forward, but I do think that there's a market for it. And I would like for us to explore that option for a different kind of learning platform.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions on item 3?
I'll just,
This is not a question. I just really need to re-emphasize that there is a huge difference between Duval Virtual and Duval Homeroom. So there may be a market, but Duval Homeroom is unique in itself because Duval Virtual is what we call students don't have to be present at certain times. You can do it whenever you are available to do it. Unlike what we're doing with Duval Homeroom, that is virtual. We're trying to mimic actual school, but you're at home. So if that market opens up and that's what people are wanting, and yet people are wanting children in school, you're talking about the same individuals. They can't teach in school and do Duval Homeroom. It really would require us to try to create Duval Homeroom as its own school, hire its own. They would have to have their own teachers. So I just want to keep reminding everyone, don't mix the two. You can take pieces of Duval Homeroom and put in Duval Virtual Academy, but the two are very different instructional online models. Just need to clarify.
I think I, for one, and very well understand the difference in them. I do think that there is still this. Listen, this is what happens when you do a good job. You come on a room, it looks good, and people want more. But I think not just the parents and the students that are finding some success with this model, but I really think that there's a market for teachers. I've had more than one teacher, multiple teachers, reach out and say, will we continue some of this in the fall? How can I be a part of it? I think that they find it to be some level of flexibility for them, and maybe safer for them. So whether it looks like a hybrid and not a zone model, I'm not sure, but I certainly think that exploring some options related to this would be in our best interest. So I'll kick off my soapbox.
All right. Thank you. We'll look forward to a future workshop on that virtual platform and how we can work that to take advantage of that growing market that we talked about. Okay. Next item is item 5, Board Member Joyce.
I want to say I pulled item 4, but maybe not.
But if you got a question on 4, let's go ahead and bring them up.
No, I don't have any more pieces there. So I do want to move over to this. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, you're talking about item 5, correct?
Well, yes.
Okay.
So a couple of questions that I had to start with, and there are actually several, but I want to start with the gap analysis where it says that we have 8 contracted board certified behavior analysts to support 2,254 students. How do they do that? I mean, that just seems like a lot of students for 8 employees to manage that.
To the chair, to Board Member Joyce, that's why we're recommending increasing that, because it is a challenge. They're not meeting those students every single day. They're broken up into sort of like regions, and it's based on the need of the students and the need of the schools that those students are attending.
Okay, so in moving down in the gap analysis, it says the district has been unable to recruit additional hired BCBAs. And what's the challenge there?
Through the chair to board member Joyce, the challenge is what we pay them, full-time employees. So there are many companies out there that provide this service that as this item is stating that we can contract with to get the services.
Okay. And I guess, if you can help me understand, because I'm a little confused with the interaction. It seems to me like in the second paragraph on the second page, where we're using visual teachers, our visual teachers to do some of the work of that these behavior technicians are doing. Does that make sense?
Through the chair to board member Joyce, if I'm reading correctly, that's a different set of employees. It's not the previous employees or services you were speaking about.
Okay.
This is about the functional visual evaluations, doing screenings. If I'm reading, if that's a paragraph where you're coming from.
So we're really just talking about two different job descriptions here.
Yes. We're talking about school psychologists for evaluations. We're talking about BCBAs, several positions that this company can provide for us.
Okay.
If you remember, we brought this item last year, and we needed more school psychologists to help us stay within that 60-day requirement. We have 60, once a student has been identified and they're moving forward through the process, we have 60 days by law to complete their evaluation. And based on our numbers, we do not have enough in-house to complete these evaluations and ensure that we maintain that requirement by law. And Duval has a very good track record. I believe we're like I would say anywhere between 98 to 99% of our evaluations are completed within 60 days. Now, this upcoming year, that might be, we might be a little bit having an issue of being able to do that. Okay, yes. Last year we were at 97.09. Completed within 60 days.
Okay. Sorry that I'm so confused by this. I guess I thought that I'm going to move on to the last graph here where it says the school year, this coming year, we've had 17 suspensions, over 10-day suspensions. With last year's 176, or the 18-19 school year, 176. And then in the expected outcomes, it said the expectation for the use of these contracted to different people is to reduce the number of incidents of restraints, seclusions, and out-of-school suspensions. So that's where I got confused when we tie both of these positions into reducing the number of out-of-school suspensions. And this year we've had 17 over 10 days, and it's such a significant difference from last year.
To the chair, board member Anderson. I'm sorry, what's the question? What's your question?
Well, I guess this item is saying we're adding these employees or these contracted employees to reduce the number of out of school suspension, over 10-day suspensions, but the number has dropped significantly from 176 to 17.
Yes, and we've worked very hard through the chair, board member Joyce. But please remember that again, this entire item, if you look at expected outcome, is asking for a number of positions, not just for out of school suspensions. But I will assure you that that number is going to creep back up because we're seeing this training on our system to ensure that we are not suspending those students more than 10 days. The district is under what they call CEIS on the number of days that African American males have been suspended out of school. So although that looks good on the surface, we're still over identifying African American males, and their suspensions are severely disproportionately for African American males. So it's not just about the suspensions. It's one group of students that seem to be the bulk of the suspensions, and we need to figure out how we can best support those students and ensure that we have put more protective, what's the word I'm looking for, strategies, not only for the students, but for those classroom teachers, how to implement strategies that would reduce those suspensions. So if you only have 8, they're triaging. They're focusing on the most severe cases, and we need to add more so that we can start working on students that are moderate cases. How do we get to prevention? Right now, we're reacting to students that are already in a crisis or pre-crisis situation. We're not doing a whole lot of, let's do some prevention. Let's catch students really early, like in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and work with teachers when they're much younger. So this item is about giving us more support and supporting our ESC department so that we're not just dealing with, oh, now we're here, how do we move forward when we maybe could have curtailed that or cut it off if we could have gotten to that student much earlier in the process.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you, Board Member Joyce. Any other questions on item 5? Okay. Item 6. Board Member Joyce.
In item 6, where we talk about Gear Up and how this program is similar to AVID, I kind of would like a little more information about if it's similar to AVID, why do we have both? And if, what is the financial impact that AVID has on the district if this is kind of similar to that?
Through this year, to Board Member Joyce, Gear Up is a grant. It is a grant that the district received 3 years ago. That grant was for identified schools. I believe they were Title I schools, and the grant started in middle school, and it's following a cohort of students. So it isn't. It's different in AVID in one. We received the money to pay for this through the Gear Up grant. We actually have someone whose only job is to monitor and administer this grant. And it is following a cohort of students, and there was a requirement once the Gear Up reached high school that we had to add certain courses. And I have Ms. Paula Renfro, in case I didn't say all the things related to Gear Up.
Through the chair, yes. And currently for the 1920 year, they added these courses and they were using an existing leadership skills component. So by making this request at DOE, they can have their courses aligned to which they're teaching, but they're teaching through an existing component, and they will have a district POC tied to each of those 4 courses that follow that cohort of children in targeted Title I high schools.
And the last question I have about this item is, can you tell me what high schools that this program is currently in?
Through the chairman, certainly. So we have Inglewood High School, First Coast, Jean Rabeau, Robert E. Lee, Terry Parker, Westside, and William Raines.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Oh, Board Member Anderson on item 6.
Thank you, Chair Jones. I have a couple of questions. When we talk about this being a grant and tracking these students, do we have data from that yet?
Was that through the chair to Board Member Anderson? I want to say that yes, but I'm not going to be on. I won't say that with 100% confidence.
Okay. I would love to see the data if we can get our hands on some, the list of skills and instruction that we're targeting here. These are really important skills. In my line of work, these are all what we call executive functioning skills. And in the business world, as people move into postgraduate opportunities and goals, this is what businesses are saying students are missing. So I know we have it in Avid. I'm glad to see it in Gear Up. I would love for every student to have more explicit instruction in these particular areas. So I'm very interested to see what the data looks like for the students that have been engaged in this. Will it continue, or is it already and we're just not seeing it in the middle school? You said it started in middle school, and now we're just moving up to a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 9 through 12. So the program exists already currently in middle school, correct?
Now, Gear Up started in middle school with this cohort of students.
It's just one cohort.
Yes, it doesn't like, oh, now let's go back to middle school. This particular grant.
One cohort.
Well, when I say one, there's one cohort in each of those, in those middle schools that now fed into the current high schools that were stated.
So the middle schools where this program started are no longer offering Gear Up.
I'm sorry, the program where it started?
The middle schools where Gear Up started, they no longer have Gear Up for students. Now it's moved into the high school.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I'm particularly interested in that in that case, because I do think that this middle school is really where we need to start with these skills. And so whatever we can do, I hope that our teachers are, getting well trained, and whatever we can do to help explicitly offer these skills in some sort of research, leadership, collective. I would love to see it integrated into our core curriculum as well. I think that's pretty cool, but we have to, have all of our teachers trained. To make a long story short, I'm really excited about seeing the data. It's really, really important for our children to learn. So if you can get your hands on it, please pass it. And if you can find anything else, so we can have these cooler skills heard for schoolers and everyone, that would be great.
Hold up. That's somebody needs to mute.
That was me. That's my fault.
Okay.
I got school going on behind me.
Okay.
Real quick, I have a quick question while I'm off mute. Through the chair, I would love to see the grant terms on this, like if we could see that at some point, because I agree with Board about too, is it possible to overlap grants? So if I know we have a cohort of ninth graders going and now they're sort of matriculated into high school. Is it possible to have two Gear Up grants at the same time to start a new cohort before another one ends? And I wonder if the grant outlines that or not, because if it's working, it would be nice to say, hey, let's go for another grant and start that even before 2023, I guess, when this grant would be over. So just curious about that, seeing the language there.
This is our second, if I'm not mistaken, our second Gear Up grant. We had one a few years ago that ended, and it'd be interesting to compare the results of that first Gear Up grant, the outcome with this current one, because I think some of the curriculum has changed. So I think that would be interesting to review. Any other questions or comments on item 6? Okay. Next item is item 11. I'm sorry, Ms. Anderson.
Chairman Jones,
Yes.
if I'm correct, you asked item number 4 to be pulled. I have it on my sheet. Chairman
Yes,
Jones asked
I
for
did.
item 4.
I did.
Or do you want to come back to it, or?
Yeah, I can make a call and get the answer. I think that. Okay. You're right, I did.
Forget it.
Okay. Item 7, Board Member Anderson.
Thank you. So I'm going to lump this one in with number 9, sort of, I think. And I'm not going to belabor it too much. But I'm really having a difficult time with charter schools that are supposed to be increasing learning opportunities with a special emphasis on low-performing students, moving into neighborhoods that are doing just fine, A-B-rated schools, into neighborhoods where there's not a need, where we are not over capacity, where our schools that are doing well and our students that are performing well have room and availability to get the services through Duval County Public Schools. It's really frustrating to me, and I know that this is not Mystique's fault, and it is not the superintendent's fault, but we're seeing charter schools that sure are having some success in their current locations, moving east before they move north, moving south before they move west, and it's a problem. It's a problem for the model, and it's a problem for the foundation of our public school system. And so I look here at the parts of the applications that were partially met, 2 of the 6 partially met, areas where the business plan, the budgets and financial pieces. I know that there are only 3 reasons that we can deny a charter school, but that 3rd piece is the business plan. And if we have a shaky budget or financial plan, I'm just not sure that I can support the expansion of these charter schools into areas where students are well served and schools are thriving. So, and I'll say briefly that if you calculate the numbers for the new expansion of these charter schools or these new charter schools, we come up with about 4,000 new seats across the district. In year 5, 4,131 seats, which will equate to about almost $25 million at $6,000 per station in a year. So I just really think that I think that the state has obviously put us between a rock and a hard place here. But when we're talking about the point of charter partners helping us serve underserved or low-performing student populations, and we are not seeing that happen in good faith, I have a problem with that. So
share that concern too. Any other questions on item 7, 8, or 9?
I had sort of this whole section sort of, I mean, to board member Anderson's point, I think figuring out for us, because it's the tale of two cities sort of piece, so to speak, because there's some charters on here that are doing exactly that, trying to go into underserved communities, so to speak, and then there's other ones who are just piled on. I'm looking at the comparison schools and their A's and B's, and I think the question that I have in my mind is what differentiates a river city in that same area or a global charter in that same area to one of the schools that we have. And I think that doesn't necessarily come up in the application. It doesn't say how do you differentiate yourself from the other ones. You can kind of read through the lines on some of it. So I would be just curious about some of that. And I think that leads me to the question around, I know that they come to a board and then come to us, but I feel like I think there is more that we could potentially do within the confines of the law to at least have these conversations with folks. Because one of the things and thoughts that I have is, and this is maybe through the chair, through the superintendent to Ms. Peak, is when it comes to being partially met on some of these standards that we're talking about, what is the order or timeline here? So you all let them know that it's been partially met, and they have a time to come back, and then they try to fix it. Like, can you walk me through those steps really quick before I ask my last question?
Through the chair to board member Willie, I'm going to ask Mr. Bryan to go through the steps that we use in the application process that gets us from any areas that are not fully met to rectifying the partially met.
Thank you, Ms. Peak. Through the chair to board member Willie. Once the application is received, it goes through a technical review just to look at, did they answer every question, did they attach all of the required documents, etc. And we have a 7-day turnaround for that. Then we move into the application review process, where the application is dispersed to different departments throughout the district. And they are the ones that recommend back to us whether their section meets the standard, partially meet, or did not meet. At that point, the statute does not require what we refer to as a capacity interview. And historically, at that time, we bring in the applicants, and they can bring in their founding board members or existing governing board members, and the district would interview them face to face. I made a decision this year because of the COVID-19 and some recommendations that were being given to us by the state and also other districts to try to move forward with the capacity interviews, but we did them through email. We distributed the documents to the applicants showing where their partially mets were, and we gave them approximately 5 days to respond. Those answers were reevaluated by the district personnel, and in all of these cases, were moved to fully met with the governance section being held to be worked out during the time of the contract itself. Moving forward, we will not repeat that same process. We will, we had 2 applicants that withdrew and will be submitting in June their applications, and at that time we will either do the capacity interviews through Skype, a GoToMeeting, some other method where we can do it on more of a face-to-face using technology. So that was the process used, and as I said, the answers were reevaluated and were given the thumbs up by the different departments. And again, with governance, we work out the governance section as the contract
There you go. So to clarify, so the one sections that were partially met, emailed out and said, hey, these are partially met, sort of, you can give us some answers and email back, and then they gave you answers, and then you re-reviewed the answers, and then came up with a conclusion, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so what we're seeing in our books is after those emails went out or before those emails went out?
What you are seeing were the initial scores of the application. We try to always, historically, have always reported the original scores that the applicants received, and then in workshop, we notify you that the capacity interview listed how they were conducted and that the satisfactory answers were worked through.
Okay, I think I'm following there.
Just to follow up so I understand too. So what we see as partially met now may be fully met.
Everything has moved to a fully met other than the governance section, which is worked out during the actual contract negotiation.
Okay. So everything is fully met except the governance portion. Any other?
Yes, sir.
And to clarify again, so are we talking about all of them, or we're just talking about one item? Are we talking about every single one of these applications has been moved to fully met except for governance, or are we talking about one? Are we still on 7?
We're presenting 5 applications. The 2 River Cities applied as a replicating high system, and they have 12 sections in their application. The other 3 use the state model application, which has 22 sections. So the 3 that use the regular application now have 21 met and 1 partial, which is the governance that we work out during the contract. The 2 River Cities had 12 sections. They now show 11 met with the governance. Well, and governance is not even a section on the high system replicating application. So the 2 River Cities actually have 12 fully met.
I don't understand. Why don't we have that information in here? Why wouldn't it say, all right, we went through this 16, for example, if there's 22 sections, 16 weren't, some of these weren't met, but then we reviewed and now they're all good. Is that, can we put that language in here in the future? Because I think it doesn't show the full picture in my mind. It shows like it's not the end of the process. We're getting this document, but there's still another step involved.
Absolutely, we can edit those agenda items to show that capacity interviews were conducted, how they were conducted, and the applicant provided the information.
And even if it's not in our draft agenda, if it can be emailed before the meeting, I think that would help clarify things for board members.
I would almost like to see it kind of moving forward in a table, right? So we've got sort of the initial application. This is where things fell after consultation or some sort of work. This is what was improved. Just to show sort of the historical changes in a snapshot would be great. If that's something that we can see, it's kind of cumbersome sometimes to flip through and read all of the details. I like them there, but if there's maybe a more concise, summarized historical table that we could maybe take a look at for the future,
would be helpful. I also, if I'm not mistaken, the state sort of expects that we will work to make sure that anything that is partially met or not met is worked out. Correct?
The state does not set a criteria for what is considered an acceptable application. The districts determine, what criteria, what score they want to move the application forward.
But they're legally bound by certain things. I'm sure Ms. Chastain would say.
If we deny an application in the areas that we deny the application, then the applicant can appeal to the state, and it would be turned over for review, and I'll let Ms. Chastain explain that process.
Through the chair to Vice Chairman Anderson, if an application is denied by the board, the applicant has the right to file an appeal with the Charter Review Appeals Commission. There's a hearing in Tallahassee typically where the district would have to defend its denial by showing that the denial was based on good cause shown. It's challenging to reach that objective at that appeal level. It then goes to the State Board of Education for a final order, whatever the Appeals Commission recommendation is. And the State Board of Education can accept or reject the recommendation of the Appeals Committee. And then depending on the outcome of the State Board's decision, the party that loses their next remedy, should they choose to continue the appeal, is to file an appeal with the First District Court of Appeal. It's all based on the record below. They look at each of the three sections, the educational component, the governance, and the business, and they'll rather than each of the 12 or the 22 components, and make a blanket decision in each of the sectors as to whether good cause was shown. It's a challenging process, and I'll leave it at that.
So when I'm looking at the expected outcomes portion of the agenda item here, and it says charter schools are expected to improve student learning and academic achievement, increase learning opportunities with special emphasis on low performing students who reading, provide parents with sufficient information on whether the child gains at least a year's worth of learning for every year spent in a charter school. Those are district expectations, or is that a state expectation?
Okay, who wants to?
The state statute governs, basically what the requirements are. There is a state-approved application. The district cannot create its own application. We use a model application provided by the state. Here again, this year, we had to use two separate models because we had two applicants applying under the high system replication. Ms. Chastain, do you want to add?
Through the chair to Vice Chairman Anderson, this is language taken from the statute, which if you printed is almost 30 pages long. I regret to remind all of you that Palm Beach County actually litigated similar issues as to whether charter schools are innovative and did not succeed in that litigation.
I did notice that language is missing in these applications where previously I hadn't seen it.
You said innovative?
Through the chair, board member Willie, I believe that I did, but I'd have to go back to the statute. I think that's one of the opening, rules.
schools. And so I know that we've had that conversation. And again, this is particularly interested it's not here. These applications. My question related to the outcomes that this is in statute is how do we measure this? So I can see here that, for example, item number 7, Goga's school grade over the course of the terms it had, which is C, C, and C. So how do I know, do we track individual students? How do we know whether or not they are providing parents with sufficient information on whether or not the child is making of the PCA? Or do we know anything other than just a final school grade? Or through
the chair, to Board Member Anderson. We do 2 site visits each year at each charter school campus, one in the fall, one in the spring, and there's a rubric that has been developed that we go in and we look at governance, we look at what's happening in the classroom, we look at data, we look at the student information system in terms of are they accurately reporting attendance, discipline, all of those different things. Members from our ESE department are on that site visit. ELL, we saw on the site visit, we go through the things that are statutory in terms of do they have certain things listed on their website that are required. We check for teacher evaluations for those done. So there's a plethora of things that we look at. This spring, the site visit is much more difficult to do because of how the schools are operating and because of the COVID-19. We are still checking things behind the scenes that we can look at in focus. And again, some of the other things we check for within terms of governance is have their governing board gone through the training. They're required to do an initial 4-hour training, and then they have to do a follow-up 2-hour training every 3 years. There's a number, I think it's about 3 pages worth of deliverables that the school has to submit to our office throughout the year to show that they are doing things. That list of deliverables is laid out in their contract. So that is part of monitoring the charter or the contract that our office does.
So specifically related to academic performance, then, we measure whether or not they are improving student learning or getting a year's worth of learning for each child by the end of your school grade. Is that how we measure that?
We look at the areas of academic accountability that are put into the contract, which again, the model contract that a number of our schools are on is devised and developed by the state. We do still have some schools that are operating under a contract that we had more ability to negotiate and to work with. Unfortunately, when you move into terms of reprimanding or noticing a school for non-compliance, trying to move toward closure, much of the statute gears itself around the school grade, health and safety and welfare of students, or possible deteriorating financial conditions. But we do look at all of those scores. We look at graduation rate for the high schools. The charter schools that offer high school components do the graduation data chat with Jason Bloom's GRIT team. For some of our charter schools that are considered an alternative charter school, those serving the students that are multiple grade levels behind, the graduation rate actually plays into whether or not that school receives their capital outlay. funding. So, but we look at all of those pieces right now.
Okay, thank you. I will say just finally that, again, I just don't know if I don't know if I'll be able to support this item. I realize where we're at with it, as a district, but this particular school has a history 3 years in a row of being a C school, with an intention to move into my district, where I have A and B schools, cannot provide transportation. Is what it looks like here. And so I just don't think that this is something that I can support for my community. I don't think that it aims to serve the students that the expectation for a charter school should serve. And it will further impose and hurt and hurt the schools and the students in the community that I represent. So, item number 7. I realize item number 9, state science, is a different type of application because they're high performing and they work under a different set of circumstances and rules. Although I'm not particularly excited about that extension either.
Say one thing. I know that we reviewed Global Outreach Charter before, and I think the unique to the board is maybe not their delivery, but the student population that they serve. They serve a huge population of ESC students. So I'm just wondering if there has been a need of sort of a underground need in your just maybe board member Anderson of that particular population, because I know that was sort of the main focus before. Certain groups and communities go to global outreach in huge numbers. So I'm just wondering if that's it, and maybe that's some digging that we can personally do, but that is it's an interesting point because it's not mentioned or sort of out front, but maybe it's one of those things that is not outwardly there.
Sure, I do think that this particular application shows an intention to serve 30% ELL, and I do believe that what it looks like in the area that they are attempting to target is probably the most English language learning pocket in my district. So I can see that, I can appreciate that in intention, perhaps, and I also want to recognize that it can be challenging with state testing and state requirements to teach an ELL population in general. So when you are a school that's teaching students that are English language learners, perhaps your grade is reflective of the additional challenges that come with students that don't speak English as a native language. And I can fully respect that. And I appreciate that point, Board Member Willie, to remind me in particular of this school's mission.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else, next item is item 11, Board Member Joyce.
Member Joyce, you will need to unmute your mic. Sorry.
Thank you.
I pulled it because under the description, the last sentence says we are looking at properties west of I-295 between I-10 and Argyle Forest Boulevard. And so that is my district. And those are the people I represent. And so I wanted to paint a picture for the board and then make a request. If you're familiar with Jacksonville, you know that I-295 circles the entire city. And if you get off at 295 at exit 19, that's Normandy Boulevard. That's where Ed White is. You go south to exit 17, and you get off at Wilson. That is where Frank H. Peterson is located. Those are right off of 295. You could spit and be there. And then if you go one more mile south and you get off on exit 16, that's 103rd Street, and that's where West Side High School is. We're going to keep going south We're going to go to Collins Road. And at Collins Road is where Costco and Walmart is. And Collins Road goes all the way down to Oakley Shopping Center. And there's tons of subdivisions, thousands of homes. And then if you go south one more exit, that's Blanding Boulevard. Blanding Boulevard is right where Argyle Forest starts. And Argyle Forest goes all the way out to Brandonville Road, which is where Oakleaf Shopping Center is. And again, Argyle Forest is thousands of homes and subdivisions. That's all it is. All of those homes in Argyle Forest that I'm describing, they are my constituents. I represent them. Their neighborhood school is Westside High. So there's a little cute subdivision where Oakleaf is shopping center. It's called Dawson Creek. Dawson Creek, their students, their neighborhood high school is Westside High, and they have to drive over 13 miles to get to their neighborhood school. I recognize there is a need for a high school. And I have, last year when the board looked at the master facility plan, I requested a consideration of, since we are rebuilding Westside High School, to purchase some land further out west, rebuild the high school there so we can meet the needs of some of these constituents in this community. If we don't do it, they're going to come to schools and they're going to take our students away from us. They're our district students. And so my request is, I just wanted to kind of give you that picture of how far it is for a neighborhood school, 13 miles to go to West Side, and to consider revisiting that master facility plan so that we can compete with some of these charter schools that are going to try to open schools in my district.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate that. And when we get a chance to review the plan, I understood the school you were looking at was closer to Baldwin, not to the Argyle neighborhood. So
Argyle, those are my constituents, and their neighborhood school is Westside High.
I understand that.
That's why I requested last year that we consider moving Westside more west so we can meet the needs of that population. Because a lot of those parents that live in Argyle, they're sending their students to Baldwin. And Baldwin is at capacity, or it's over capacity. And we have growth that is coming out in the Baldwin area. And so where you have 3 high schools within 3 miles of each other off of Interstate 295, it seems like something the board should look at to say, if we're building West Side, we should rebuild it out west where we can meet the needs of these taxpayers.
Okay.
Through the chair, can I ask a quick question? Lori, Hershey had it.
Remember Hershey?
Thank you. This is an interesting conversation. I remember just a few months ago, we passed at a board meeting, we approved a high school for yet another charter school in my district. I have a 1-to-1 ratio of charter schools in my district, and we have 2 board members talking about, oh, I'm going to get 1 or 2 in their district. Charter schools are here. They're not going away. And I have had multiple conversations with Dr. Green because I'm aware of yet another high school that is going to compete with my schools in District 7. I think we have to do as a board, because schools can be put up and be placed wherever they want to without need.
my district and Board Member Smith Juarez's district represents areas that within just like a mile radius. It's like at what point is it saturated? It's like a Walmart on there. I mean, a Walgreens on every corner. My conversations with Dr. Green has been, I think we as a district need to begin to take a serious look at a couple of things. What are we going to do to ensure that we attract and retain students? Because we are competing. I think we need to take a hard look at the career technical classes that are in demand and replicate those throughout the district. I think the other thing we need to do is look at schools that have waiting lists. What are our magnet programs are in high demand, and can we replicate those in the district? That obviously are what parents want. Schools, people, look, we have choice, it's open. I was at Mandarin High School this morning. They're giving out signs to seniors. One parent said, I'm going to Baldwin. Another parent said, I'm going out past the airport. Somebody said, I'm going to St. Augustine. So the idea that people only attend schools in their neighborhood is false. But people will go where the programs are that they want. And we can sit here and talk until the cows come home. Charter schools are coming. If we're going to compete and win, then we have to take a serious look at what we're doing and how we're doing it, because they're going to come. And they can go anywhere. And I have found in my district that, quite frankly, the charter schools have probably helped with growth. If we didn't have the charter schools in my district, we would be bursting at the seams. What happens is that I'm pushing saturation. So I think that, and just through the chair, one quick point through to Ms. Chastain, if I may. I believe originally when charter schools were created, it was for innovation and instruction. But it seems to me within the past 4 or 5 years or somewhere in there, the state of Florida has come out and really relaxed that requirement for innovation and instruction. Is that not correct?
Through the chair to Board Member Hershey, I think the opening language of the statute, I'd have to check, has remained relatively unchanged, but I think what the Palm Beach litigation shows is that there's no legal remedy. It's not really enforceable. The way the rest of the statute is written, it doesn't give the district any teeth to enforce that. And year after year, as the statute is amended, obstacles are removed for charter schools.
Ms. Hershey, you gotta unmute your mic.
That's it. I don't have anything else.
Okay.
I clarify. I through the chair to Board Member Hershey. I understand charter schools are here to stay. And me pulling this item is not saying that I don't support charter schools. I support a parent's right to choose the education they want for their students. That's what I support. And I think petition is good. The reason why I pulled this item was to clarify there is a need on the west side for a high school. If we don't do something about it as a Duval County Public School, you're going to see this happen. And so as we go forward with the master facility plan, my request was just that we revisit this particular school and the need of the community.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with the need for the school. I do disagree with the need to take a school from one neighborhood to create one for another neighborhood. That's where I disagree with that. There's a definite need for a school west of 295, the area that you mentioned. But why take a school that's functioning, that's providing a service for those students who live in that neighborhood, to create one that is needed? I agree to that, but try to take one from one neighborhood to do that. I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to focus on the need. I think we need to focus on making sure that we are competing with the charter schools in a very effective way. We're advertising and promoting the programs that we offer, the unique programs that we as a district can offer. I think the pandemic has really shown parents how nimble and how effective and efficient the district can be in meeting the needs of our students. And my battery is getting low. So I may not be Joyce.
Let me just clarify. When I started my visual, I said that Ed White is 3 miles down 295 from West Side High School. Ed White is at 70% capacity. So there are seats at a school for those neighborhood children. But it is absurd to me that I have constituents that have to drive 13 miles to go to their neighborhood school. So that's why.
And there are choices. The parents live as far as Mandarin to drive all the way to Paxson and Stanton School because of that choice. So just because you have a neighborhood school does not mean that parents would choose to attend that particular neighborhood school.
I agree.
There are a lot of issues that we need to examine before we talk about closing a school, and we need to look at programming and offering those programs, increasing the number of seats for those programs where we are really at capacity, over capacity. Any other comments? Okay. Item 12, Board Member Joyce.
We have a couple comments, Board Chair.
On item 11.
I see Board Member Anderson has her name hand up, and I had a comment too. I was in the queue, I think.
Okay, go ahead, Board Member.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those situations where I think data is to be super important when we're thinking about this, because to Board Member Joyce's point, think about even thinking about where we're pulling from these neighborhoods, where are they going now? Where are students that are either high school age going now, and sort of really getting a real sense of what that is. And there has to be a reason why. I mean, these are business decisions these charter schools are making as well. So they're coming for a reason, and that's a good point of figuring out what that is. What are they seeing? Did they survey somebody? Did they figure out something? Are they offering some programs? Because they wouldn't be coming there if they couldn't fill their seats, or wouldn't be thinking about it. So I think that's also a part of this whole conversation around how do we, to Board Member Hershey's point, start to really get on sort of more of an offensive stance, but also an understanding and sort of setting out what we want. So we're sort of driving the course of where we're trying to go. So I love this conversation. I think it's a conversation we have to have at our level, because this is our new normal, and we have to figure out how we together or work in sort of this environment with one another, because we need to make sure we're meeting the needs of the people that want to go to the schools that we are having.
All right. Board Member Anderson.
I just wanted to, I think Daryl really was able to say a lot of kind of what I wanted to circle back around to, and I understand Board Member Joyce's point about needing to meet the capacity needs of a neighborhood that's growing and expanding. I think Board Member Hershey, you've seen that better and more than any of us, certainly. And we've always said charter schools will come and they'll fill that need because we have capacity issues, right? We've had this conversation over and over again. We don't have the capital dollars to just go expanding willy-nilly. If we can't pass a sales or tax referendum, then the facilities plan doesn't happen. So, everything happens in the context of what we have the funds to do and what we have the agility to complete as a district. Certainly charter schools are not going anywhere, and they're going to meet the need if we can't. So again, I appreciate Board Member Hershey, Board Member Willie kind of coming back to
where are we? I know we've had this conversation several times with how do we look at programming? How do we expand? How do we address the needs of our student population, the desires and wishes of our communities and our parents, so that Duval County Public Schools can meet that? When we're looking at wait lists and we're looking at programming that works, where are we? How often do we need to have that conversation? Where are we with addressing that? Through the chair.
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson and the entire board, we are certainly looking at just the information that everyone has addressed today to be able to improve our program offerings in our Duval County public schools. So we will have information forthcoming on an initiative that we're working on right now in a hope to resolve some of the concerns that have been presented this morning.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Board Member Jones. Are you? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Got a little technical problem here. Okay. We're on item 12. Board Member Joyce.
Thank you. I understand. I guess I'm a little confused by this virtual charter school. There are several, K-12 or virtual. There's several ways that you can have a virtual learning environment. The question that I had was, if you're a D school in a virtual learning environment, this year we don't know. It's not a question. It's just a little bit that bothers me.
You want an explanation of this particular item?
When did the board approve this virtual learning charter school? Originally.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Chastain.
This applicant applied around 2011 or 2012. I can't remember exactly. It was as soon as the charter school statute was amended to permit virtual charter schools. They applied in a number of districts around the state, and it was with mixed results. Some districts approved the application, some districts denied the application. Duval and Seminole and others denied it, and we were appealed and overturned, and we were in litigation. Ultimately, we worked out our differences, and the charter contract was negotiated and prepared. I forget when, but shortly after that. This is one area where the state has not adopted a standard contract or a renewal contract. That's why this form is a short form. It's too difficult to use standard because there are material differences between a virtual charter school and the traditional, in-person instruction, such as funding and things like that. Again, the charter school statute really doesn't give school boards the opportunity, although you have to consider the academic performance of all students as the most important factor. The statute also says that it takes 2 consecutive Fs for termination. So I think when the grade performance is such that it has resulted, I don't want to speak for Dr. Green, but what I've seen happen over the years is recommendation for a renewal in this case is shorter. It's not a typical 5 years. I think this one is 3 for renewal.
Thank you for that clarification. That helps a lot. The 760 students, are those all Duval County Public School, students that live in the Duval County Public School area?
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, they serve students outside of Duval County. So this is not just for Duval County. And to add on to what Ms. Chastain said, we brought this renewal to the board in March, and we talked about a normal renewal would be a 5-year renewal, but with this particular one, based on how we had renewed other charter schools when they did not have the C or better, Dr. Green recommended this to be consistent with that, and we did a 3-year renewal. And then, as Ms. Chastain said, whereas we would normally, a month or two after the renewal was voted on by the board, we bring a contract to you. There is no state model virtual contract. And because of the history of how this virtual contract was negotiated and so forth, it was recommended to just bring an amendment forward to extend term of that contract that I think was somewhat labor intensive to negotiate.
Okay. And then my final question is under the gap analysis where it shows the state assessment results. I was curious as to why when we were comparing it to Duval Virtual, we had no data for Duval Virtual.
Through the chair, we listed that because it is the only comparable virtual school we have in Duval. However, when you go to the state website, there is no data to show. But I think our feeling was that if we had not at least listed Duval Virtual, recognizing was the only virtual school we have, that someone might ask, why would you not compare a virtual to another virtual?
Does Duval Virtual have a grade?
Through the chair to board member Joyce, it has an I, and that means that it hasn't met one of the criteria, and I believe that criteria is test 95% of its students that attend Duval Virtual. And if they not test that amount, they don't give them a school grade. It sits as an I, incomplete. But Mr. Wright could add some more information if I didn't cover everything.
No, ma'am, you are correct. They received an I. We did appeal. They tested about 90% of the students this year, which was an increase, but did not meet 95%, and the state did not award us the appeal to give it a grade.
Is it possible that we could get some sort of assessment result data so that the board would know, how we are comparing to this charter school?
Yes, I do have some different data points available that we could model up and can provide that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Joyce. Anything else on item 12?
I just want to inject that this charter school is in my district, and I visit that school. I visited it prior to the pandemic, and it looks a lot like Duval homeroom. So teachers are able to interact with students. Students get into small groups and they come back. It's really an innovative way. And at that meeting with that principal indicated they were looking to expand their student enrollment. But it is similar to what we're doing with Duval homeroom. If you ever went and toured that and sat in a class and saw what it was like. I just wanted to get that insight.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, next is item 17, Board Member Joyce.
Mm-hmm. So because of the pandemic, we are going going to have to give the assessments at the end of the school year. And I just wanted to clarify that because of that, teachers would not receive, because they would not receive any performance pay this year.
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, this waiver is about waiving the evaluation assessment portion. We have to negotiate about teacher performance because that impacts employee pay.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Board Member Anderson, you also asked for 17.
Board Member Willie, if you wanted to jump in, I'll to you for a moment. Okay.
Yeah, the question that I would have is that we have a couple of schools who are waiting or determining where teachers can go based on their evaluations, their VM scores and other things. How does this affect that as far as if a school has to have high performing teachers and can't have teachers that aren't? Do they count this year as, do they just recount what happened last year, or do they hold this year harmless? How does that work from a sort of a school map perspective? Does that question make sense to the, okay.
Board Member Willie, currently those schools should already have teachers that have VAM scores and evaluations that are in alignment with the requirement. I don't know that we received any direction on that at this time about you can't have a teacher teach at your school that has an a VAM score that is unsatisfactory and then needs improvement, has to meet a certain threshold. If we are not in direction, then it would more than likely we would give direction if for the next upcoming year you still cannot have someone who has a VAM score that was unsatisfactory. Irregardless that this year you won't have one, if last year you had one, we would probably say, well, that person cannot teach at that school that's in turnaround or DA.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Anderson.
My question was along the lines of performance pay. So where do we stand with negotiating, or what's the plan for that?
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, I'm going to let Ms. Schultz address that issue. I don't believe we started negotiations at this point because, one, we don't have a signed budget. So I'm going to let Ms. Schultz answer that.
That is correct. We have not started negotiations at this point.
Okay, so we are waiting on a budget from the state so that we have a sense of what kind of funds we can negotiate with.
We are currently waiting specifically on the economic pieces. Ms. Brady and I did speak earlier this week about possibly starting negotiations on non-economic pieces so that we can at least get those behind us, but we have not yet started that.
Okay. And do we have any idea of what we pay out or what the historical payout has been for performance pay?
We can provide you.
I would be interested in that number. I think certainly the work of all of our staff this year making this transition warrants a thank you. If we could do that, monetarily, that would be wonderful. Especially if it was, worthwhile. If it's more than like $5. So I would be interested to see what we paid out in the past historically for performance pay, as we await the budgets from the state to see where we can move. But I would love to be able to give a little something. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Okay, thank you. We have have a workshop next Tuesday on the budget anyway. So that'll kind of give you some indications of where we're headed. Any questions on 17? Okay. 19, Board Member Willie.
Really, through the chair, I really just wanted Ms. Begley to have to speak on the virtual Zoom this call, so that's really why I pulled this out. Really, I just wanted to get a quick sort of executive summary. I know this is sort of different than things that we've seen in the past, so could you just walk through sort of the recommendation point and sort of what this generally means for our budget moving forward now that we had to sort of do some resolutions to our current state?
Through Chair to Board Member Billy. So this document will, on page 55 on, that includes all of the summary of all of the various budget amendments. There are a couple of things that are a little different than that you're used to seeing, and that's because we had information related to the family empowerment scholarships. We made some corrections to the budget, not the actuals, for the issuance of the CAFR. And so those are some of the things that you've noticed that are a little different. So those are just numbers in line with the audit report.
Got it. And was there anything with the sort of COVID epidemic that affected this sort of in a large way, or are we seeing sort of steady trends in most of the things that you're doing right now?
So this, through the Chair to Board Member Willie, this is the budget amendment for March. So yeah, so this is for March. You may not see a lot of that right now on this document. You may see some additional items in April, because yeah, we established some separate funds to account for the COVID-related budget expenditures.
And those won't kick in until we won't see those until the April budget sort of feedback, right?
Right. Yes.
Got it. Thank you. Great to see you.
Okay.
Another question on item Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. Specifically related to any budgetary changes due to COVID and our accommodations, I would be interested, just as a heads up, to know if we have had to make any changes to our budgets for food services with any loss or overages, loss revenue or overages there, and then also in custodial and cleaning services, any adjustments that have been made there. I would be interested in seeing those numbers as we move forward, specifically, so that we have a sense of the budgetary impact of some of those changes. And then there's other things that I'm not thinking of. I know obviously transportation has been a big adjustment, although we see that in our contract amendments that we're doing, and in the food service and the custodial, I'm not seeing quite as clearly. And then if you wouldn't mind, well, first of all, is that present here so far, or do we expect to see that in the future?
So through the Chair to Board Member Anderson, we are tracking any budget-related transfers that have to do with any COVID-19 additional expenditures or savings or that type of thing. You won't see that in this document yet because it's March. A lot of activity happened in April, but there are several of us that are tracking that type of activity.
I would be interested in maybe having a separate conversation at some point, as we start to realize the real impacts and adjustments we've had to make due to the virus. And then the last question I have about this particular item, and you touched on it briefly, but I would appreciate a little bit more explanation. The $7 million decrease we have in the FEFP due to appropriations for the Family Empowerment Scholarship. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. So as you're aware, through the Chair of Board Member Anderson, as you're aware that this is a new program for 1920, and as we prepared the budget for this year, we didn't really have information from the state as to an estimate of how much money this would be. And so we have been in conversation with DOE since December. And so that $7 million there, that represents around just under 1,200 FTE of students that have used the scholarship. And so that's the amount of money that was built into our budget, but we will not be receiving. So we reduced down our budget of revenue that we will be receiving for FEFP.
Can you remind us what the Family Empowerment Scholarship is and why 1,200, FTE may have gone elsewhere? Whether that's Ms. Bailey or the superintendent or the chair.
Through the chair to Vice Chair Anderson, the Family Empowerment Act was passed, as Ms. Bailey said, last year, and it is actually, and I've forgotten the name, but there was another, it wasn't called the Family Empowerment Act, but there was another opportunity for students to transfer to private schools, that the dollar amount of what you needed to earn to qualify for that went up to, I think it's close to $90,000 a year, and I believe over the next 3 years that dollar figure will go up again, so that more families qualify for the Family Empowerment grant. Well, it's not really a grant, but that they can transfer. And for the first year, no one knew how many families would take advantage of that. So normally in our FTE projection, we set a budget aside for McKay, because we kind of know based on a trend how many students take advantage of McKay scholarship. So we would set that aside. This first year, no one knew how many students would that be. All we were told is that we needed to make that advertisement. As if you go on our website, you can see that we continue to follow the guidelines. And this upcoming school year, we said, well, based on what happened this year, we will make sure that we put in our FTE projection a number that represents those students that might take advantage of the Family Empowerment Act. But because I would almost say all districts did not have that information, districts now have to make that adjustment.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation. I think it's important to reiterate that these are public tax dollars that would otherwise be in our public school budget that divert into a private school system. It's really important to understand that it's, what the nature of the scholarship is. Where will this $7 million come from?
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, there were various sources that we used to fund the $7 million. Now, part of the 1,200 children that came into that program, part of it came from charter schools. And so we did have some funds reserved from the charter school budget for any FTE that we did have to pay out. So part of the money came from charter schools, and then we had another reserve amount that we could take it from.
Thank you for that. Finally, as it relates to this, similar to charter schools, these scholarships, like the superintendent said, I think that the family income threshold will continue to go up. Right, it was raised because there was a wait list, and so we raised it, and then there's another wait list, and we raised it again. I think that seems to be sort of the pattern that we see from the state. And so similarly, I think that paying attention to how we recruit and retain these students, tracking them, understanding why they're choosing to take the scholarship and move out of our public school system, well, what is it that entices them away? And having a real understanding of that would be helpful. So I don't know if we're tracking these students at this time, being able to get some
competition's not loosening.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on item 19? Seeing no hands. Smith, Board Member Smith Morris has joined us. Thank you. And you had questions on items 1 and 4 that you take offline, I think you said.
Yes, thank you. I've been on the audio since item 5, so appreciate the discussion. And if I can ask a quick question on question 1, or I can do them offline, either one. If you already addressed it, that's fine.
Go ahead and ask your question.
So I'm just curious, with the Jack's Chamber, have we seen them take their C6, have we seen them take any position, or how are we working with them on the referendum? And if that was already discussed previously, I can go back and listen to the tape.
To my knowledge, they have not. I said I was going to reach out to Daniel Davis to find out why they haven't, but no, they have not, to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair to, I'm sorry, Chair, sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Green.
To the chair, to the board, I don't know, it's a subcommittee of the Jack's Chamber did ask me to speak with them tomorrow about our master's facilities plan and to give them highlights. It's sort of the same presentation that we did last year. I think it might have been Board Member Hershey at the time, and Board Member Jones was sitting in the back. And so they've asked, can we see that again? So I don't know why this particular subcommittee of the chamber is asking to see that information again.
Which subcommittee is that? You know?
Through the chair to Board Member Willie. I don't really. It's the Jack's Chamber USA portion, and so no, I'm not even going to try to tell you who I know which subcommittee because it's not the complete chamber.
Okay. Board Member Smith Juarez, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate knowing that you're going to present to them, and yeah, can follow up offline. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Item 20, Board Member Willie.
And this is, I just had some questions about sort of some of the language in here. This is written, I had to get like my source dictionary out for a lot of these terms in here. But I have just a quick question about 36 extreme networks and like what does that exactly mean? And then I think in the previous outcomes it sort of mentions that some of this was trying to be done in-house. We didn't have capacity. So I just want a quick explanation on that. And that's my only question here.
Through the chair to the Board Member Willie, these are what we call power over Ethernet switches, and these are what are required to put in the new phone system. So we are kind of following that trend with E-rate right now, and they are kind of really pushing for this whole voice over IP thing and getting rid of the old analog phones. So we're kind of following that trend. So, for example, last year with this item, we budgeted about $1 million for switches, but in turn received $11 to $12 million of switches that were all paid for by E-rate. So these are all the switches that are allowing us to very quickly go through our schools and replace all of the old analog phone systems.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on item 20? Seeing no hands. Item 22, Board Member Willie.
Yeah, and this one I was just looking at the financial impact. I know we're in the state now, we're using a lot of, everybody's on Teams and using our Microsoft platforms. And the increase is not that much. Are we anticipating it maybe more after COVID? Because I'm looking at 1920 and it's like 2.5, and then it just increases to
renewals based upon some set pricing. So we are good.
Awesome. That's really good, Jim. All right, appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. No questions on that. Item 27, Board Member Joyce. You gotta unmute your mic.
My only question was through the chair to the superintendent. I know that, I guess I just want a little explanation. I know that we have our own district employees that do landscape maintenance, mow the grass, and so I was kind of wondering why we would use an outside service.
Through the chair to Board Member Joyce, that's item 28. What?
27.
I have the transportation. What?
Oh, 27. Item 27.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the Landscape Maintenance OEO Sheltered Market Award.
I'm going to let Mr. Suarez answer that question, even though I know the answer. Oh.
The chair to Board Member Joyce. We perform grounds with an in-house force, correct, for a portion of about 70 of the schools. And then we use these minority set-aside contracts. One, to provide an opportunity for contracting. Two, they're inexpensive. I mean, they're less costly than even an in-house force. We also have a portion that's performed through the ABM contract. The reason we have three different approaches, like a stool, basically, like a school, basically, is because at times one of those capabilities can go down. For example, we've had an OEO contractor go bankrupt. Meanwhile, the grass keeps growing. It typically happens on a heavy rain summer. Grass is growing really fast, and one part of that three-part team can't keep up. And so it gives us the ability to flex and keep up with the demand. So that's why we have the three-pronged approach. In addition, with the OEOs, it's really an important opportunity for us to hit some of our OEO minority business goals. And there are a number of multiple vendors that can do landscaping, which allows us to set aside the entire contract for award to those minority firms. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
All right. The question on 27, item 20, the last item is 28, Board Member Willie.
Yeah, I know this has come up a number of times just about our transportation services, and I mean, so I just wanted to get sort of a general update on where we are, because I know things change almost every day with this. And then I know there's like huge cost savings that potentially could happen on the back. I think it was $3.8 or something $1 million. So just trying to figure out, does that go back into the coffer for next year? Do we discuss that in other budgetary terms? So just wanted to get an update on this item, just in general on our student transportation services contracts.
Green, Mr. Soares.
I'm going to let Mr. Soares answer.
It's through the chair to Board Member Rowley. Currently, you have looked and approved GSAs 2 and 4 with first student at the last board meeting. We are in active negotiation with Student Transportation of America and Durham. The three contracts involved, GSA 1, 1, 2, and 5. We've largely completed negotiations on 1 and 1, 2. We're going to go into negotiations this afternoon on 5, and we'll be setting up a negotiation probably tomorrow on GSA 3 with Durham. So I hope to have all of those negotiations wrapped up this week and the final documents attached to the agenda by Friday. We're working closely with Office General Counsel, Karen Chastain, who's been a great help, and transportation staff to try to wrap those up. And the savings are basically, the amount that we project to not have to pay as a result of the reduced level of service. Hopefully I addressed your question. Remember, Willie?
No, that's great. And so you feel like we're on time and on track to be able to have all the negotiations done by the time we get to a board meeting or vote on these items?
Well, I got one a piece of wood, so I hope so. So far, it looks good, and I think we're going to make it. But we've got a couple more negotiations to go. No real at this point, so that's the good part. So I think we will make by the end of this week.
Thank you for your work on that.
All right. Any other board member Joyce?
Yeah, the follow-up question, maybe I missed it. I think board member Willie asked about the cost savings and, you know, what was going to happen with that. So can you clarify that for me?
I can talk about the amount of savings, but I have to defer back to Dr. Green as far as what's going to happen with that dollar amount.
Through the chair to board member Joyce, the cost savings remains in its budget line. We even if there is savings to any of the budget lines, they remain frozen until we close out at June 30th. So inside the transportation budget, and I'm going to make up a number, let's just say there's still 15 million and that cost savings is 3.5. It just sits there until we are ready to close out and look at our total fund balance. So in the end, it probably will move to the fund balance. We may put it in a signed fund balance because we know that we'll have to budget for transportation costs again this upcoming school year, or it may go to the unassigned. But it's going to sit in the current budget line where that budget would be coming from.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. Through the chair to the superintendent and CFO Michelle Begley, I just want to appreciate that we are holding the recommendations actually that Ms. Bailey made in her former position as the board auditor, not to sweep accounts and not to reassign budget lines mid-year or monthly, but to really understand what our financial picture is at the end of the year and to make any of those requests of the board were something to need to happen during the year. So, you know, there's always the opportunity for the superintendent to come to the board and explain because of savings wanting to move budget line items. But many of the current colleagues will remember when we had that long list of recommendations from Ms. Bagley, and I think we're in a much better financial position because of it. And so I just wanted to thank Ms. Bagley for continuing those practices and the superintendent for reinforcing them. So thank you. I think we're in a better place and we're able to weather some of these unpredictable circumstances because of the financial practices that we've had over the last 3 or so years. So thank you.
Thank you. Those are good best practices. Dr. Green, you had
I just wanted to inform the board that we will be adding another agenda item, and it is in reference to PPE, that we will have that item on the agenda for face mask, face shield, for protection that we foresee that we'll need to have in place.
okay. That's for the meeting on Tuesday.
I'm just letting you know it's going to be added to this agenda.
Oh, okay.
It will be a new agenda item. So you'll look for it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. There's no public comment, as I understand. Okay. Does anyone have any governance? Well, we need to adjourn the workshop first.
Board Chairman Jones, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's great that the district was able to team up with, I believe, Channel 4 to celebrate our students. But I've had some parents reach out to me and say that parents have to pay if the students are featured in this production. I did not think there was any cost for parents, for our seniors to be highlighted in this? Could I get some clarification on what parents have to pay for their students to be featured?
All right, I was understanding that there was no cost for the student to be featured, but if you wanted to run a thank you ad, a congratulatory ad, there was I think a $30 charge for that. But Dr. Green.
Through the chair to board member Hershey, that is the only cost I'm aware of. If you want to do a personalized message inside that, there is a cost for it.
Well, that was my understanding too, but I just got perspective that was wrong information. I just wanted to be certain that I was giving the correct information. So thank you.
Well, I will make sure we put it in writing and send it to you. I'm not aware of any cost about your child being featured, but if you wanted to do a personalized message, there is cost.
Okay, I'm thankful that board member Hershey could join us. I know she was out putting out signs. I think they were putting out signs in elementary and high school seniors. I think there was 600 and the teachers met this morning. So congratulations, Dr. Hershey, on that work, and Dr. Green for your direction in that area. I think that's great for our seniors. Seeing nothing else, someone move to.
I have something for governance.
Okay, we got to adjourn the workshop. That's what I've been asking. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Vice Chair Anderson, second by Board Member Smith Juarez. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The workshop is adjourned. The School Board of Duval County is now convened in its workshop. The agenda for the workshop is governance. Who did I see first? Board Member Vice Chair Anderson, go ahead.
Board Member Joyce can go.
I just have a quick question for the superintendent. I have had a few of my constituents reach out to me concerning the parks at our schools, and the utilization. They want to, things are opening back up. If there is a park at a school in their neighborhood, do you have any idea when we are going to allow our families to utilize those facilities?
Through the chair to board member Joyce, no, we don't have a timeline at this moment. I will tell you our concern is that we have no direction yet on youth sports, high school sports, and the concern is if we start allowing our campuses to be open, one, there's no one there to monitor social distancing. So right now, we just consider all of our campuses closed for all reasons. But we know that we have to start having that conversation. We spoke with organizations such as KHA and indicated, if we're not going to have summer school in our facilities, we feel like we can't open our facilities for another organization to be inside the facility. So we're just in the middle of those discussions, and we're trying to work through what we believe is the appropriate timeline.
Okay. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. I think that gets to, I have a few different points or questions or concerns for governance, but one of them is, will we do a workshop or will we come together to start to discuss some of these things? What's going to happen for summer? What's going to happen with PPE? What's going to happen for, reopening in the beginning of the school year? I assume that the superintendent and staff are thinking about these things, and we must be thinking about these things, obviously, because we're going to have to get some preparations established for that. But is there a plan or to come together with the board to start to have any of these conversations?
through the chair to Vice Chair Anderson, yes, it will be a workshop topic. We felt like we still needed to do budget and the consolidations needed to take priority. We have subcommittees working on how we have to close down school. I know a lot of people think, oh, you're not there, so you just close. No, it's a little more complicated than that. We have students who have personal items inside schools. We have teachers who get to take out their personal items from the school. And so our number one focus right now is closing down school. And how do we do the still normal things in an unusual, not normal situation, such as collect fees and clean out lockers. And so that's been our first phase, and we developed the procedures of how parents can come get their items without getting out of their car. How do we allow teachers to come into the building, making sure we apply the social distancing guidelines. So no more than 10 can be in a building at a time, or in the case of our really large high schools, they have multiple buildings, so we could do some different things there. But once that situation, remember, Willie, are you trying to hypnotize me? That pin going back and forth. I seem to be drawn to it. We'll start.
Just don't watch it, Dr. Green.
Yeah, I was like, I can't stop looking at that pen. The next phase, and I can tell you right now, we are still looking at virtual summer school. We are not really looking at anything else. We remain in constant contact with the Department of Education. They have a statewide task force, and we're trying to get them to tell us information, and that hasn't been forthcoming as of yet. So it just we are focused on what we can control, and right now we can control how we close down school. And that's why I mentioned about the chamber giving us, I said 8,000, I think it's close to 20,000. So we have masks for staff to ensure that when we start closing down schools, or teachers being allowed to come into their classroom, that we are giving them the PPE needed to, one, put us in the guidelines with social distancing and moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do think that there's probably room, especially as we start to have conversations about budget and strategic direction. Obviously, this has a significant impact on all of our next steps, and as we move into next school year. I had the opportunity to join in on both the FSDA conference call last Friday, as well as the Council of Great City Schools call, because I personally am feeling a little bit anxious about how to help move the school district through this in my role as a board member. And the conversations being had were really rich. I appreciate them very much, but I think a part of it that resonated with me, a conversation that we need to have, is starting to look at the reality of the costs, where we have needed to make some adjustments, where we've been over, where we've had savings. I know that we are looking at closing out our budget year June 30th, but when we get to a budget workshop maybe next week, that's a conversation that we can have at that time. In line with that conversation, a lot of the discussion on the conference calls was about what is our role as board members. Certainly the department has put together a task force. It may be a little bit shallow on the side of professional educators on that task force. And so do we have an opportunity to share our voice? Do we have an opportunity to provide guidance? We anticipate that the legislature will go back into special session in June. And some of the speculation I'm hearing is something like a $10 billion cut to public education. This is not only in the the state of Florida, but certainly federally, there's a big push to talk to our congressional leaders about budgets, which brought up some discussion around resolutions. So on the conference call of the Council of Great City Schools, several districts around the country, and Miami-Dade here in the state of Florida has passed a resolution to send to the federal leaders, but I think that there's also opportunity to send to our state leaders. So I don't know if that's something we want to post to the board where we have opportunity to pass a resolution asking for funding to be considered or protected. The superintendent shared with us letters both to the House and the Senate from the Council of Great City Schools. But I think we can pull information directly from those letters to put into a resolution. They would kind of establish our priorities and to be in direct contact with our representatives and the folks that we already have relationships with before they get into session in June, to let them know what is the reality of how this is impacting us and what our perspective or what our needs are going to be anticipated. I know Representative Burr has already reached out to me. His office has already reached out looking for some direction about how this is impacting our teachers. And I think that, we can have a voice here if we choose to speak up. And so for that reason, I think that it's opportune to create and pass a resolution related to funding budgets. And I'd like to hear the board's feedback on that.
Okay. Comments? I think we do need to address that and be proactive in that area. Make sure that our delegation members are aware of our position. So if they, and the state of Florida is so dependent on sales tax, until we know that that's going to have a profound pandemic rather, it's going to have a profound impact on their budget. Ms. Juarez?
Thank you. I think Board Member Anderson brings up a really good point about being proactive around what we do know now and what we can anticipate, as well as outlining those things that are still unknown but have the potential for significant budget implications. So it makes sense to me, and if you weren't putting your hand up, I'm going to put it up. Liz, if you maybe wanted to work with the appropriate folks to draft a resolution, I don't know if it's feasible for that to be done prior to next Tuesday's workshop, so that we can spend just a quick minute maybe reviewing it, Mr. Chairman. But I do think that makes sense, and I appreciate you thinking through that.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. Ms. Anderson, you're going to work with staff to have something presented to us by next Tuesday, so we can so we can at least discuss it. And have it be emailed by Friday, so we have the weekend to review it before we meet on Tuesday.
I will get with staff and see if that is an option, and then we'll kind of get moving as soon as possible. Certainly felt like by the end of May with this agenda, it was a good opportunity to get that shared out to representatives in the legislature and federally.
Any other items? I have one item. We have to elect a representative to the executive board for FSBA. Former board chair Laura Hirsch is serving that position very well, and unless there's an objection, I think she's willing to continue in that role. Ms. Hirsch, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think I saw an email saying that you would be willing to serve in that role again for another year. Yeah.
That is correct. I have been on all of those Friday phone calls that Vice Chair Anderson mentioned, and it is helpful to get information and to know what's going on. So I have enjoyed serving in that capacity. but if someone else wants to take on that responsibility, it does require some extra work outside of just the meetings, additional meetings at the different conferences.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairman Jones, I believe this requires a vote, so we may have to move this to.
No, we're not going to vote. I'm just having a discussion right now. Yeah. I just wanted to find out, put it on the agenda for our next meeting. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other questions? We have the alternate too, and I've served, I think, as alternate. If someone wants to take that role up, that's fine, so that since Laura and I are on the same track for term limit is on this board, it may be helpful if someone else serves as the alternate.
I want to see, so are we allowed to make nominations?
Well, no, we just want to discuss it so when it comes up at the next meeting, we have to. I just want to get it discussed and hashed out so that when we meet, we can move right along.
Okay,
I think we have to make a recommendation by the end of June. Is that right, Lisa? Okay, it's on the next agenda, so just be thinking about it. Vice Chair Anderson, go ahead.
I was just going to say I would support Member Hershey continuing on that board of directors role. I appreciate that.
All right. All right, anything else for governance?
Chairman Jones, while you brought that up, the other conversation we need to have is to think about the legislative committee with FSBA. I don't think that email has gone out yet, but typically in June, we also elect representative to serve on as the liaison between the school district and FSBA, specifically on legislative issues. And that too requires, it'd just be a good conversation while we're on it to think about who will serve in that role and as the alternate in that.
On the legislative committee. Oh, that's it. Okay. Who's represented now? Is it
Vice Anderson?
Anderson. Okay.
And I think Board Member Willie was the alternate.
Okay.
I don't know if they want to continue in those capacities or if anyone else. It's if you're interested in legislative issues, it's really kind of neat because you get a lot of information broken down for you so you can understand it and relate it to how it applies specifically for the district. I served in that capacity for a couple of years, but I know Board Member Anderson, Vice Chair Anderson's doing it now, but if anybody is interested in legislative issues, I would encourage you to consider that role.
Okay. Vice Chair Anderson?
I have enjoyed it. I would be happy to stay in it, but certainly would set aside everybody else that was particularly interested in getting more involved in legislative issues. I'm going to follow it either way. So,
okay.
If somebody wants to dive in there, I'm certainly happy to keep that role. So we can.
Okay. Don't everybody put up their hands at the same time, and I don't see any, so.
That will be the alternate, and it's that same.
All right. Well, we'll take that up at our next meeting then. Okay. Anything else for governance?
I had a quick thought through the chair. I know we're at this point we have the half penny is slated to go on the ballot. So just wondering what our sort of operational course of action as a board.
Well, thank you, Mr. Board Member Willie. Let me Ms. Chastain to kind of alert the board of one of the issues that has arisen with the legislation and still work through it. But go ahead, Ms. Chastain.
Good morning again. The administration sent the board resolution and the passed city council ordinance to the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue pointed out to the administration and brought it to my attention that The good news is the board's resolution meets the statutory requirements. What the Department of Revenue pointed out, however, is that the City Council legislation, when they amended the pending legislation to attach the school board's new resolution, which is compliant and conforming, the City Council neglected to go into the body of their ordinance and change the ballot language for charter school sharing, which is required by statute. So I have alerted the main office of the Office of General Counsel of the Department of Revenue's findings. I don't yet know if this is material, if it has any impact or not, and if so, what is the way forward to fix that? The chairman and I have been in touch about this, and I have brought it to the General Counsel's attention as to this discrepancy in the body of the ordinance. It is not with respect to your resolution. So that's the good news.
The resolution was complete and met the requirements of the Department of Revenue as far as the language is concerned. Unfortunately, the ordinance that was approved does not, and we're waiting on the Office of General Counsel to determine whether or not that can be corrected, either with a scrivener's error, or whether it has to be reintroduced and approved by the City Council again. It seems like they're having some issues because the human rights ordinance was just sent back to the City Council, and so hopefully we'll keep you posted on any developments there, but hopefully we'll hear something very soon from OGC on whether or not how they're going to correct that wording. Woman Willie, I will get information to all the board members about the PAC and the sales tax this afternoon, so you can get your questions answered. That's I guess that's the best way to handle it. Anything else for governance? Is there a motion?
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Not really that necessary. I was just gonna thank the thanks is sincere and necessary to staff for all of the work that clearly you are doing to make sure that we not just maintain what's happening in our district, but that you are also very cognizant and aware of amendments and changes that need to be made based on our new and we all hope temporary way of work. The only question that my husband had about our agenda was, did you have to order custom binders, because he didn't know they came this way. So thank you to staff for all the work that you all are doing and continue to do to ensure that all of the district operations are not just moving forward as business as usual, but are moving forward with what we need to be doing and within the current environment. Thanks to everyone. And I will also move to adjourn if nobody has anything else. I think that's what you were asking, Chairman.
Well, I think Vice Chair Anderson has a comment.
Just one quick request. I know we said that we will get back together at some point and kind of talk about next steps. I would ask that in that conversation, or maybe even next week, I'm interested in knowing what student monitoring is looking like right now, or academic and performance monitoring. Since we're doing testing and end of course exams, how are we preparing to have a conceptual picture of where students will need to land when we return to school, and whether or not there's something we're doing to catch up students that may be behind or have fallen behind during this time. So obviously that's not necessarily a question that I expect to have answered now, but if that could be included as part of a future discussion about what we're doing to cope with this and where we're going, specifically related to the education academic needs of our students and how we'll meet those, how we're monitoring it, and if there's discussion so far about meeting the anticipated increase in social and emotional needs for those students. And I would second a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, second, just
that's why you can't discuss something and offer a motion. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I couldn't leave the call without it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So happy Teacher Appreciation Week. I know there's a bunch of folks, not a bunch, but people listening to the call. But just big thanks to our teachers. And I know last week was Principal, I think, Appreciation Day or week or something. So just to our amazing staff and teachers and Princess, thank you for all the work you do.
Okay. Anything else? Now we motion by Smith Warrior, second by Anderson for adjournment and discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. We'll see you next Tuesday.
The Second World War brought death and destruction right onto our doorsteps.
The war really mattered to Elizabeth. That marked her as the leader for her generation.